So we have discussed so many things in our classes regarding GPCR signaling and other type of signaling which are actually occurring within the cell. We have discussed autocrine, paracrine, endocrine, and juxtacrine signaling. We have discussed nuclear receptors and steroid signal molecules, which generally act on nuclear receptors by binding to them either in the cytosol or in the nucleus. Then we discussed about surface receptors, for example, some peptide hormones and growth factors generally bind to the surface receptors, for example, GPCR we were discussing. And then they show their effects over the cell. So this basic type of cell signaling or GPCR signaling in case of epinephrine hormone, which generally control many aspects of cell metabolism, we already have discussed. So in today's class, two things I want to teach you. First, the regulation of GPCR signaling. And the second thing is how this GPR signaling also control one other signaling pathway that is via calcium ions. And so this we have studied actually. So protein kinase A we have studied. In today's class, we will discuss protein kinase C. This is not the protein kinase C, this is protein kinase A. So I'm telling that we have studied this particular portion. In today's class, we will discuss protein kinase C. So I'm coming to protein kinase C. And then I will tell you what are the basic similarities between protein kinase A and protein kinase C pathway and what are the differences. Okay, so the first similarity is, so both pathways, whether it is normal protein kinase A activation pathway or whether it is protein kinase C activation pathway, they are same because there are some receptors in the surface of the cell or in the plasma membrane which bind to some of the molecules towards the outer side of the cell membrane, and they will transmit the signal towards inner side or inner leaflet of plasma membrane, because this is only half portion of plasma membrane is shown, therefore it is inner leaflet of plasma membrane. See, this is only one lipid, so same structure is also here. So the outer leaflet of plasma membrane. So the signal is being sent from out extracellular portion to the inner cytosolic portion of a cell. So we will discuss how it is happening within the cell. So we should move to some other PDF. So, okay. Okay, one thing I left in our, okay, I'm coming to the topic protein kinase C, but before that, actually, one more thing we are going to discuss in today's class only about this particular table. I referred this table in my last class, and I told you that there are 4 types of G proteins based on their function. So, for example, first, the trimeric G proteins can be classified in 4 categories based on their functions. So first is stimulatory, means which is having alpha subunit, means having some stimulatory function or S function. So G alpha S, they are referring to G alpha S. So actually we have studied 2 types. One is G alpha S and G alpha inhibitory. So the first thing, G alpha stimulatory, means the G protein which is going to activate some proteins, for example adenyl or guanyl cyclase enzyme to produce cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP. So these are called G alpha S type. So this type of family of GPCRs are having 2 type of members. One is G alpha S and second is G alpha olfactory. Because we know G proteins are everywhere, means uh, for example in the smell, light and taste receptors, in the smell, light and taste receptors, in our body, they are mostly GPCRs. So olfactory means these receptors are also having are also lying or coming under this particular G alpha S family. So what is the function of alpha unit in these G proteins? So we know there are three subunits in primary G proteins: alpha, beta, gamma. So beta and gamma are forming a complex, and alpha generally dissociates from the G protein, as you can see from this particular diagram. Okay, so this is a G protein. This is a GPCR, G protein coupled receptor, and this is a G protein which is made up of three subunits: alpha, beta, gamma. Beta and gamma are forming a complex, and G is either bound to GDP or bound to GTP. When it is bound with GDP, it is interacting with this particular beta gamma complex. But when it is bound with GTP, it generally dissociate and make a distance from the beta gamma complex and activate another enzyme, that is effector enzyme for this G alpha subunit. This is bound with GTP, which may be either adenyl cyclase or guanyl cyclase to produce secondary messenger cyclic AMP. Actually, this is producing cyclic AMP, and guanyl cyclase is producing cyclic GMP. Same thing you can also find in your Pathfinder. So it is shown here how the GDP bound form is converted into an active GTP bound alpha form. Okay, so these alpha subunit is active on in these cases or in this particular family. But when we talk about G alpha inhibitory, or this is not or zero, whatever you say, the second family. So in second family, you will see that both alpha and beta gamma complex is having some kind of function. But in this family, the beta gamma complex do not have any function. Okay, so here the alpha subunit is going to activate your adenylate cyclase. Sorry, not activating, it is inhibiting, because it is inhibitory, it is I. So it will inhibit, it will interact with your adenyl cyclase or guanyl cyclase enzyme, and it will inhibit the synthesis of secondary messenger molecules. Whereas the beta gamma complex is having some function to activate some of the potassium ion channels. Okay. Similarly, in this particular case, in your rod cells of your retina or eye, there are G alpha T for transducer, because they are interacting with transducer protein. So there, the alpha subunit is going to activate cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase enzyme, which will inactivate your cyclic GMP and will convert cyclic GMP into GMP, normal GMP, means which is not the. Okay, see here if you are not able to get it. Okay, so it is given somewhere. Yes. So actually, this is there is another protein called rhodopsin, and it is interacting with another G protein. This is GPCR. This is G protein. Light will come and activate 11-cis retinal into all transform and will activate the rhodopsin or GPCR. It will interact with some G protein called transducin, and this G protein alpha subunit is going to inhibit, or activating. Oh, sorry, it is activating this particular phosphodiesterase directly. So it will move to cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase, will activate this particular enzyme, and will convert cyclic GMP into GMP form, so that it will no more able to open these sodium ion channels. Thus, membrane hyperpolarization will result, and thus those signals, means those light signals, are being converted into nerve impulses, and you are able to see the things. Similarly, this G alpha naught is having two subunits, either beta gamma complex or alpha and beta gamma, which are either activating K positive channels, as in this case, and it also inactivates the calcium ion channel. So it is activating one type of channel but inactivating other type of channel. Whereas the second action of this particular G alpha naught is to activate phospholipase C beta. So today we are going to discuss this particular thing, means these are coming under this particular family, G alpha inhibitory or naught. So this is G alpha naught, and these alpha and beta gamma are going to activate your phospholipase C beta enzyme, which we will discuss in today's class. So, okay. So before start, let us finish this particular table. So there is another G alpha, either you say GUST gust or gust inducing protein. So this particular protein is having some alpha subunit, and this will activate the phosphodiesterase enzyme, similarly as in this case. Third classification of this particular GPCRs are G alpha Q11, Q/11. So it is either Q or 11. In both the cases, alpha subunits are active and they are going to activate. Similarly, this phospholipase C beta. Okay, so and another thing is also found, which is not discussed anywhere in your Pathfinder, but it is means it is discovered that there is both type is called G alpha 12 or 13 type of GPCR protein, in which they are having alpha subunits, and it is going to activate some Rho GEF vector. So this is not given in any book, so don't worry, we are not going to discuss about this. But yes, we are going to discuss about G alpha naught and G alpha Q11, because these are going to activate your phospholipase C beta enzyme. Now move to another PDF. Sorry, I think this is given in this only. So actually we have discussed these things. So directly coming to GQ, or this particular phospholipase C beta activating GPCR, that is called GQ. So this G protein coupled receptors exert their effects via G proteins, that is, for example, GQ. It will activate either GQ or G11 or G naught, whatever you say, but it is describing about GQ here. So that activate plasma membrane bound enzyme, that is phospholipase C beta. Now see how this particular enzyme, bound enzyme phospholipase C beta, is interacting with your plasma membrane. So actually this is very clearly given in your okay, so for example, this is a phospholipid that is called PIP2, and there is an enzyme phospholipase C, PLC beta, which will convert this particular lipid in your inner leaflet of plasma membrane, that is called inositol. This is phosphoinositol, and it is having two other phosphate groups, so diphosphate. Okay, so somewhere it is given that this is inositol, sorry, will be converted into this form. So this is 4,5-bisphosphate, phosphoinositol, phosphatidyl inositol 4,5-bisphosphate. So this PIP2 is not very abundant. It is present in very minor amounts in your inner leaflet of your plasma membrane. So one of the most widespread pathway, that is the intracellular signaling, is based upon the use of second messenger, which is being derived from this particular lipid, membrane phospholipid, that is PIP2. It is a minor component of the plasma membrane. So underline this, this is not very much abundant. It is very minor component of your plasma membrane, but yes, it is going to produce three type of secondary messengers. In this class, we will discuss two, and one another we will discuss either in last of our class or in tomorrow's class, because okay, so names of three messengers which are going to produce from this particular phospholipids are the diacylglycerol. So when it is broken down by your phospholipase C beta or phospholipase enzyme, it will converted, and it will be converted or broken down from here. So this particular bond is cleaved. So one OH group is generating here. This is called diacylglycerol, and this diacylglycerol will remain bound to your plasma membrane, which is going to activate the protein kinase C enzyme. Okay, so someone of you was asking that when this protein kinase C will come, and I tell you that we will discuss about protein kinase C in our upcoming classes. So today is that particular day, and today we will discuss everything about protein kinase C and this calcium, because C for either this is being activated by this calcium ion. So C for calcium, C for protein kinase C. So the first secondary messenger which is produced from this PIP2 is diacylglycerol. The second messenger that is secondary messenger which is being produced is called IP3, and IP3 is inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate. So this is 1,4,5 triphosphate. And third secondary messenger which can be produced from PIP2 is PIP3, which will be given in next. Okay, some page. I don't know where they. So here, so this PIP2 in presence of one particular enzyme PI3 kinase, okay, it can be converted with the help of this ATP, can be converted into PIP3, and this PIP3 is also acting like critical for signaling cell proliferation and survival. So okay, so it is acting via another protein kinase that is called AKT. We will discuss about AKT in our upcoming classes. This is also a secondary messenger actually, so it will work where it is given that it is a secondary messenger. So we will discuss in the text in our upcoming classes, so not in today's class. So we are going to discuss this phospholipids and calcium ions and their regulation. Okay, so where we were here. So this particular phospholipases are of various types. Okay, so phospholipase C we are going to study in this particular class. If someone asks you and some question may come in your mind that beside phospholipase C, some other type of phospholipases are also there in the cell. So yes, there are phospholipase A1, phospholipase A2, C and D. Four type of phospholipase. They are very specific, means if you are having a glycerophospholipid, I'm saying glycerophospholipid because it is having glycerol chain and it is attached to fatty acid 1, 2 and a phosphate group and an alcohol group. So this is the basic structure of a glycerophospholipid. So in this case, it is inositol glycerophospholipid. So therefore it is called PIP2. Okay, so C will cleave this particular bond where it is being attached to this particular phosphate. So as you can see from this particular diagram, sorry here, so it is cleaving this bond so that this OH or this particular OH group can be regenerated or hydroxyl group can be regenerated and will cleave this particular phosphate and this alcohol or inositol moiety. So therefore they are called phospholipase C family. So okay. Whereas phospholipase A1 will going to cleave this particular fatty acid at first position. Phospholipase A2 is going to cleave at second position. D is going to cleave your alcohol group from this particular bond. I mean, we'll leave this phosphate group over this glycerol molecule. Now there is four type of phosphoinositide which are very specific in mammals. So mammal express four classes of phosphoinositide specific phospholipase phospholipases that are phospholipase C beta, gamma, delta and epsilon. I will discuss two in this class, phospholipase beta and phospholipase gamma. Now this is very important note here that how these two are different. Okay, so both are phospholipases C, but this phospholipase is C because they are phospholipase C, so they will cleave this particular bond only. But there are two classes, one is called beta and one is called gamma. Why this particular classification came in picture? Because they are having different structures. Okay, so all these phospholipases require the presence of calcium ion for their enzymatic activity. Now, what you need to note in this particular section is, okay, so let me move this. So see, so one thing which we discussed that, okay, let me show you something first. So this is a G protein. Okay, so this GPCR is interacting with some G protein which is activating it, and this particular G protein alpha subunit after binding with GTP will going to activate your phospholipase C beta, and which is going to cleave your PIP2 in your plasma membrane inner leaflet into two forms. One is called diacylglycerol, and one is and it is going to activate your protein kinase C, because diacylglycerol will directly bind with protein kinase C. Second pathway which is going to activate, is this PIP2 will be broken down into diacylglycerol and IP3. This IP3 will move into the sarcoplasmic reticulum or endoplasmic reticulum. It is called smooth endoplasmic reticulum because it is present over these ribosomes are present somewhere. Oh, sorry, rough endoplasmic reticulum. So it is going to release the calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic stores or endoplasmic reticulum stores. These calcium ions after release will bind to protein kinase C and will activate this particular protein kinase C. Because this is a kinase, so it will going to phosphorylate some of the target proteins, and thus your signal, because this particular signal from the outside of the cell is moving downstream and will activate many of other enzymes by phosphorylating them, by adding some kinase, some phosphate groups by this particular kinase enzyme. So okay, so we are coming to this particular diagram. So one thing you have seen in this particular diagram is phospholipase C beta. Now I'm showing you another diagram where you will see phospholipase C gamma. So note the difference. Okay. So the second diagram is this one. So actually I do not discuss this particular tyrosine kinase with you guys. I will discuss from the tomorrow class onwards. We will discuss tyrosine kinases. But this tyrosine kinases, instead of GPCR, so there are various type of surface receptors. We are discussing GPCR, so you are familiar with GPCRs. So similarly, some other type of receptors may be present in your plasma membrane, which are called the tyrosine receptors. Okay, so these tyrosine receptors are having some SH2 domain interacting phosphates. Okay, so this phospholipase C gamma is having this SH2 domain. Okay, so this SH2 domain is very specific to the phospholipase C gamma, whereas phospholipase C beta do not have such type of domains. Therefore, the protein tyrosine kinases receptors are going to activate another type of phospholipase C, that is called phospholipase C gamma, which are going to cleave your PIP2 in your plasma membrane inner leaflet and producing diacylglycerol and IP3, and which will work in a similar fashion. This diacylglycerol will directly bind with protein kinase C, whereas IP3 will release some of the calcium ions from the endoplasmic reticulum stores. So these calcium ions will come through these channels or calcium ion channels, and they will bind with protein kinase C and activate the protein kinase C. So I hope this is clear that PLC beta and PLC gamma. Okay, so it is given here that PLC beta and PLC gamma. So this PLC beta are activating in response to GPCR proteins, whereas PLC gamma is activated in response to protein kinase, tyrosine kinases, which are another type of cell surface receptors over the cell membrane. So there are some queries. Okay, so someone is asking. Ankita is asking, is GQ is different from normal GPCR? They are not different. They are one of the class of these GPCR as we have discussed in that particular table. Sir, from where this OH is coming to EAG? From nowhere. Actually, these hydrogen ions are being added to this particular bond. So who is asking this? Ankita. Okay, both the queries from Ankita only. So Ankita, see, when this particular bond is cleaved by adding a water molecule, so this water molecule will provide a hydrogen which will replenish this OH, and other OH which is produced from water hydrolysis will be added over this particular phosphate. So you can say it is coming from water, but okay. So second query is, actually we have discussed one table. If you remember this GQ is coming from nowhere. These are classes of or the family of GPCRs. So they, based on their functions, means whether they are activating the adenylate cyclase or some other type of phospholipase C beta, they can be classified as stimulatory, inhibitory, not doing anything, zero, or not. Okay, so, and G, alpha, Q, or 11, which are going to activate your phospholipase C beta. Hope this is clear. Okay, so one more thing actually I find for you guys, you will find in your pathfinders. So the, okay, so something is still remaining. Okay, so yes, they are classified on the basis of roles or their functions actually. You are exactly saying this. Okay, so you got this point, I hope. Fine. So based, okay, so two type of signaling molecules we have discussed. One is hydrophilic and other is hydrophobic or lipophilic, I say. So what are the major differences between these type of signal molecules? This we do not have discussed in our classes. So generally, if we talk in terms of solubility, so you are okay, you are very much familiar about these two terms. Hydrophobic means they are water soluble or water loving, which is generally adrenaline or epinephrine, for example, because we know this is a peptide hormone, so this will be water soluble or water loving. So generally, it cannot cannot pass across the membrane. So generally bound to cell surface receptors, for example, GPCRs. Okay. And some hormones or the growth factors will bind to, for example, insulin will bind to protein tyrosine kinase. We will discuss in our next class. But for now, I can show you. Okay, so it is given over 363. Okay, so somewhere. Oh, sorry. Okay, so see here, these receptor tyrosine kinases, which we are discussing for protein, this phospholipase C gamma. So they are activated in response to insulin, and it is a very important question that insulin is going to activate which kind of signaling. So they generally activate receptor tyrosine kinases. Okay, and some other growth factors, for example, epidermal growth factor, transforming growth factor, for example, platelet derived growth factors, fibroblast growth factors, and CSF. This we will discuss in our immunology classes. Colony stimulating factor, CSF1. It is all going to activate receptor tyrosine kinases. So have patience and wait for the tomorrow's class, and we will come to this particular section. Today we need to finish many things, so we need to move. Okay, so this particular classification we are talking, so solubility, in case of solubility, they are water soluble, estrogen, some hydrophobic molecules which will bind to the nuclear receptors, they can cross the membrane. They are lipid soluble. Receptors, generally they are having cytosolic or nuclear receptors, whereas this particular class is having membrane receptors. This is clear, I hope. Primary effects. We have seen GPCR act via enzyme activation, for example, adenylate cyclase, phosphodiesterase, this type of enzymes, protein kinase A, protein kinase C. So they are doing enzyme activation generally. Whereas the nuclear receptors are generally having transcription factors, and these are directly regulating the gene expression generally. Okay. Duration of effect, therefore, because they are activating many of the enzyme in the cascade, so they are having short, means their minute to in seconds to minute, they can survive. This particular signaling is short. Okay, so effect will be not very long, means it is very short duration effects, whereas these nuclear receptors or nuclear receptors are activating some of the genes, and genes are resulting into formation of proteins. So this is a long, means hours to days, means they are doing fast, means they will go directly within your cells or nucleus, and they exert their effect for long duration of times. Query. Okay, no problem. No problem. Okay. So Aarti has just joined the class. Aarti, you are too late, beta, for this particular class because we are discussing so many complex things in today's class, and you will मतलब डर मत जाना उस. So okay. Now, so we were here actually. Okay, so we will discussing protein. Okay, phospholipase C beta. Activated phospholipase C cleaves the this particular phospholipid that is called PIP2. Okay, phosphatidyl inositol 4,5 bisphosphate to generate two secondary messengers. We have discussed IP3 and DAG. The membrane phospholipid PIP2 is a minor component of the plasma membrane that I already have told you, localized to the inner leaf fat of phospholipid bilayer. One secondary messenger that is called diacyl resveratrol DAG remain associated with the plasma membrane, whereas the second is produced from this particular cleavage of PIP2 that is called IP3, that is inositol phosphate, that is having 3 phosphate, 1,4,5 phosphate, 3 triphosphate. So it's a small polar molecule, and this polar molecule can be released into the cytosol. It will be released into the cytosol, will move to the endoplasmic reticulum and act as a signal to release the calcium ions from the endoplasmic reticulum stores, because we know calcium ions are stored inside the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so IP3 act to release these calcium ions from the endoplasmic reticulum by binding to the receptors that are called ligand-gated calcium ion channels. As a result, cytosolic calcium ion level will increases. Okay, this is very important to note here now again, that what is the concentration generally when these calcium ions are stored within your endoplasmic reticulum, and what are the concentration change when these are released by these ligand-gated calcium ion channels after binding of these IP3 molecules or the secondary messengers. So someone to answer this, actually, I think someone should know this. Actually, what is the concentration change? Waiting for your answers. Okay. So anyone? We are having only 9 members in today's class. Okay, no one is answering. So I'm telling. So, okay. So if you are reading from this particular book called Cooper, it is given over page number 622. So two important notes on this particular page. One thing is, okay, I'm coming to calcium ion concentration, but before that, this particular note is given here, the toxic snake venom. So if someone is bitten by a snake, so what is the mechanism, how these toxins in snake venom are going to affect an organism? So contain so many phospholipases, and we know phospholipases are going to cleave the phospholipids in our plasma membrane, and we know the most fragile cells in our body, we know these are RBCs, red blood cells, because these are having, these do not have nucleus, these do not have any type of other organelles. These are very fragile and we require them for, okay, so once this venom go into the blood, RBCs are having large populations. So what will happen to RBCs? So these phospholipases will cleave, the hydrolysis will occur. So these phospholipids by the venom toxins or venom from the rattlesnake or these cobras lead to the rupture of red blood cells membranes. So once these phospholipids will be broken down by various phospholipases, because the snake venom are having so many phospholipases. Okay, so they will break these phospholipids from here and there, and thus lead to the lysis of RBCs. Okay, so second thing which I wanted to tell you was, actually in chapter 13 also they have discussed this. The cytosolic concentration of calcium ions is maintained at an extremely low level, that is called 0.1 micromolar. So note this. Generally, when these calcium ions are stored within endoplasmic reticulum, you are having this concentration in your cytosol, and this is very low, means not enough to activate some of the proteins, some of the enzymes which are being activated by these calcium ions. क्योंकि actually these are calcium ions are being pumped into the inside the endoplasmic reticulum to maintain this very low concentration. Okay, so what will happen when this IP3 will come and bind to this particular receptor? So this is your endoplasmic reticulum membrane. This is your plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is having PIP2 and phospholipase C beta or C gamma, any other phospholipase C, is going to cleave this PIP2 into two forms. One is called diacylglycerol, one is called IP3. Diacylglycerol will remain bound to the plasma membrane, whereas IP3 is a small polar molecule, so will be released in the cytosol and will go to the endoplasmic reticulum where it is having their receptors. Again, receptors. Okay, so it will bound to the endoplasmic reticulum membrane receptor, that is called IP3 receptor, and will open this particular calcium ion channels, so enabling calcium ions to come from these endoplasmic reticulum stores into the cytosol. So the concentration will start increasing in the cytosol. So this 0.1 micromolar will be becoming 1 micromolar, means it is a 10-time increase in the concentration after binding of IP3 to this particular receptors. Okay, we see. So there, if you're facing some issues with my voice or screen, someone is messaging me that I can resume my class at 9 p.m. So what is the reason why you want to? Is everything is fine? Are you able to hear me or able to see the screen? Priyansh is saying everything's fine. Shrezural, no any problems, sir. I think some of you are facing issue with this particular. If you're facing any issue, means if I'm not audible or okay, so you can log out and rejoin the class. Okay, so you can. Fine. So we were discussing that these calcium ion concentration will increase, and what is the increase? So the concentration will increase about 10 times. So this is very important to note here. The concentration will increase, or I can say can increase. So now the question should come into your mind. So it should click. At what concentration, means if the concentration can increase up to 10-fold, what will be the concentration at which most of the enzymes will be activated? So what is the concentration we must require to activate the enzymes? This is not like it should increase the 10 times and then only the enzymes will start working. This is not the case. So this IP3 act to release the calcium ions from these endoplasmic reticulum by binding to the receptor that are ligand-gated calcium ion channels. As a result, this concentration will increase about 10 times, 1 micromolar. So they will exert their effects, the activities of varieties of target proteins, including protein kinase C and some phosphatases, for example. Now, this is very important again to note some proteins, for example, called calmodulin protein. We know calmodulin is a very specific protein which will interact with calcium ions. So this calmodulin require only the cytosolic concentration of calcium ions about 0.5 micromolar. इसका मतलब ये है कि अगर कैल्शियम आयन की कंसंट्रेशन 5 फोल्ड भी बढ़ गई, मतलब 0.1 से 0.5 भी अगर हुई, तो भी calmodulin activate हो जाएगा. Means, so the minimum concentration that is required to activate the calmodulin and some other enzymes is 5-fold at least. Everything is clear? Fine? Or you have some other doubts, you can ask, okay? So now what is the mechanism, how this particular protein kinase C is going to affect our activities, means our target proteins? Someone is asking, I do not know, asking or saying, sir, do not have doubt. Okay, Shreya is saying, I am getting everything. So fine, very good. So now, okay, so we have discussed this portion, and we are knowing this, that this diacylglycerol and IP3 are going to activate this protein kinase C. We also discussed one of the protein kinase that was called protein kinase A, क्योंकि उसको cyclic AMP activate कर रहा था, इसको calcium ions activate कर रहे हैं, therefore it is called protein kinase C. So now the question is whether this protein kinase A and C are going to work similar fashion, in a similar fashion, or they are having some different type of activities. So see here. Sorry, this is not here. It is given here. So this protein kinase C will be activated as a result. Okay, so we have discussed this portion up to here. So this IP3 will open these calcium ions, and these calcium ions will be coming into the cytosol. As a result, cytosolic calcium ion concentration will increase about 10-fold. So you can write it here, 10-fold, which if affects the activities of variety of target proteins, for example, calmodulin, which require only 5-fold increase in the calcium ion concentration, that is 0.5 micromolar in the cytosol, including protein kinases and phosphatases, for example. Diacylglycerol, and these are different category of enzymes. Kinases are going to phosphorylate the target proteins, downstream proteins in the cascade, whereas phosphatases are going to remove the phosphate groups from those particular proteins. And we know some of the kinases activate some of the proteins, some of the phosphatases are also going to activate or inhibit some of the proteins. So that's how signaling is. I do not know what Aarti is doing. She is coming, going, God knows. Okay. So diacylglycerol together with this phosphatidylserine and calcium ions help activate enzyme protein kinase C, which is recruited from the cytosol to the cytosolic phase of the plasma membrane. When activated, protein kinase C phosphorylates specific serine or threonine residues. Okay, so note down this protein kinase C is again a serine threonine kinase. Okay, so it will phosphorylate either serine or threonine in the target proteins. What is the meaning of this particular line? Okay, it is being recruited from cytosol to the cytosolic phase. You can see it here. Okay, so actually this was present. Somewhere it is given that. Okay. Okay, fine. So this protein kinase C is actually present in the cytosol, but because this diacylglycerol is interacting with this, because it is already in the plasma membrane, so it will make a complex with diacylglycerol. This protein kinase C will be recruited to the plasma membrane because diacylglycerol and protein kinase C will form a complex and interact with each other. Okay. So we have seen that the protein, this phospholipase C, either beta or gamma, will be recruited, and they will activate this particular cascade to produce diacylglycerol and IP3, and IP3 will open some of the calcium ion channels in the endoplasmic reticulum by binding to these channels, and this the calcium ion concentration will increase, and this concentration, increased concentration, will either activate protein kinase C or some of the other proteins, for example calmodulin. This calmodulin is a dumbbell shaped proteins, and this dumbbell shaped protein is will bound to 4 calcium ions because they are having specific sites for interaction of calcium ions. Once it is bound with calcium and this calcium calmodulin complex is formed, this dumbbell shaped form will be bent. Okay, so this conformation change. Okay, why this conformation is required to activate some other protein. For example, this protein is, what is the name of this protein? This is called calcium calmodulin dependent protein kinase. So this particular protein kinase, so this bent form will going to interact with this particular protein because this is an inactive form. But when this calmodulin calcium complex will interact with this particular protein kinase, which is a dependent protein kinase, so it will activate this particular protein kinase. And one example is CAM kinase family members. So this particular CAM kinase family members are going to activate in this similar fashion. Okay. Now the question was whether the protein kinase C, which is being activated by this particular cascade by these diacylglycerol and calcium ions, whether it is going to work in a similar fashion or it is having something different from previously discussed protein kinase A. So before telling you the details, I want to remind you that how this protein kinase A was working. Okay, some of you will. Okay, so the protein kinase A here. So we know from our previous discussion and classes that the cyclic AMP as a secondary messenger was produced and was interacting with one of the proteins or enzymes present in your cytosol that was called protein kinase A, and it is having 4 calcium. Sorry, this is not calcium here. This is cyclic AMP is the secondary messenger in this case. So cyclic AMP binding sites over its regulatory subunits, and it is having catalytic subunits and 2 regulatory subunits. So and that is called C2R2. 2 catalytic subunits, 2 regulatory subunits. Once the cyclic AMP will interact with the regulatory subunit, the catalytic subunits will be freed and will enter into the nucleus where they are going to, because they are catalytic subunits of protein kinase A. Kinase is a phosphorylating enzyme, so they will going to phosphorylate some of the transcription factors in the nucleus. For example, the cyclic AMP response element binding protein CRAB. Okay, so this CRAB is already interacting with this screen, that is response element of DNA, where after phosphorylation they will bind with some coactivators and thus enhance the transcription of their targeted genes. Similarly, this protein kinase C is going to work. Okay. Now we will move to our protein kinase C. Hope this is clear. So okay, so we are going to read one of the paragraph and everything will be clear. Okay, so this concentration will increase and this calcium carbon complex then bind to this variety of target proteins, including protein kinase C. And one example of such calcium calmodulin independent protein kinase is myosin light chain kinase. Okay, so this is for myosin, this is calcium kinase. Okay, so which signal actin myosin contraction by phosphorylating one of the myosin light chains. Okay, so muscle contraction. Okay, so it is already dependent upon this calcium ion signaling. Other protein kinases that are activated by this calcium calmodulin, including the members of CAM kinase family, which phosphorylate a number of different proteins, including metabolic enzymes, ion channels, transcription factors. One form of the scam kinase is particularly abundant in the nervous system, where in your neurons also, okay, it regulates the synthesis and release of neurotransmitters. Underline this. So one example is how the scam kinase will work in your neurons. It is going to control the synthesis and release of neurotransmitters. Okay, okay. So in addition, CAMP kinase can regulate gene expression by phosphorylating the transcription factors. Similar way, in a similar fashion, जैसे कि अभी प्रोटीन काइनेज ए कंट्रोल कर रहा था, वैसे ही कैम्प काइनेज भी कुछ ट्रांसक्रिप्शन फैक्टर्स को, जैसे कि क्रैब हो गया, ओके okay, उसको फॉस्फोराइलेट कर सकता है, एक्टिवेट कर सकता है, कंट्रोल कर, रेगुलेट कर सकता है. इंटरेस्टिंगली, वन ऑफ द ट्रांसक्रिप्शन फैक्टर फॉस्फोराइलेटेड बाय कैम्प काइनेज इज कॉल्ड क्रैब. So, which is phosphorylated by the same site by protein kinase A also, because we know protein kinase A was also a serine threonine kinase, and this particular kinase is also serine threonine kinase. So, they can work in a similar fashion. This phosphorylation of CRAB illustrate one of the many intersections between calcium and cyclic AMP signaling pathway. Now, one thing what is understandable from this particular text is many signaling pathways which may be different but lead to the same results. This is possible within the cell. Okay, so many different signaling pathways can lead to the same type of results. For example, this calcium signaling or your protein kinase A signaling. Okay, so whether it is protein kinase C or protein kinase A, they will result in the same type of changes within the cell. Okay. Another example includes, so you need to underline these two lines. Okay, they are working in a similar fashion, so they will help each other. Okay, or they can work in the absence of other. Okay, so other examples include the regulation of adenylyl cyclase and phosphodiesterase by calcium calmodulin, the regulation of calcium ion channels by cyclic AMP, and the phosphorylation of number of target protein by both protein kinase and calcium calmodulin dependent protein kinase. So it is only telling you that these two pathways can act in a synergistic way, can integrate their effects and result into the similar type of uh, changes within the cell. So whether it is cyclic AMP or calcium signaling pathway function coordinately. Coordinate means they will coordinate with one another to regulate many cellular responses. You need to underline this particular sentence. Now our next query is, so about 9, and I'm giving you 2 minutes break. If you are having something uh, difficult to understand or are having some query, you may ask. Okay, first, then we will move to this particular section, how it is going to control the ryanodine receptors in your neurons. And let me see how many members are remaining. Amu, Ankita, Priyanshi, Salu, Shreya, Trishla, Vandana. Okay. Only 7 people. Okay, fine. So I can think these are dedicated cell signaling students. In some classes, there are about 14 or 15 members. Okay, Ankita, I'm discussing. So, okay, Ankita is asking, I need to repeat the calmodulin part in short. So, okay. So, in short, we can discuss calmodulin again. So, Ankita, in cell, there are various type of enzymes or proteins. For example, this calmodulin, okay? So, this particular protein is having some calcium binding sites, and it is generally present in this conformation. So, binding of calcium, it can bind with 4 calcium in a similar fashion जैसे cyclic MB protein kinase A के साथ bind होते हैं, है ना? So once after binding with this calcium ions, so there is a change in conformation of this particular calmodulin protein, and this calmodulin protein in this changed conformation will interact with some of the protein kinase. Okay, so this is called calcium calmodulin complex dependent protein kinase because it is going to interact with this particular protein kinase. So suppose it is interacting here, and it will, after interaction, it will be activated. So it will activate this particular kinase, and this particular kinase is going to phosphorylate some other proteins or target enzymes in a downstream pathway. You can see this here also. So it is given in your Pathfinder, a complete paragraph actually. Calcium calmodulin complex. Many of the effects of the calcium ions are mediated by the protein calmodulin, so which is activated by calcium ions binding when the concentration of cytosolic calcium ions increases. How much it is increasing? It is increasing fivefold. It is about 0.5 micromolar. You can write it here. Calmodulin, which is a small protein or 17 kilodalton protein, is a small, highly conserved calcium binding cytosolic acidic protein found in all eukaryotes. All EK. So it bind up to 4 calcium ions and act as an important intracellular receptor for regulatory calcium signals. तो जब भी ये कैल्शियम सिग्नलिंग होगी, जब भी कैल्शियम सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर की तरह से वर्क करेगा, तब तब वो कैलमोडिलिन को एक्टिवेट करेगा. जब भी उसकी कंसंट्रेशन इंक्रीज होगी, कैलमोडिलिन एक्टिवेट हो जाएगी और फिर कैलमोडिलिन अपना इफेक्ट शो करेगी. ओके, सो question can come into our mind, what is the function of calmodulin? So the calcium ion bind to the calmodulin in a cooperative fashion. जैसे हीमोग्लोबिन के साथ में ऑक्सीजन कोऑपरेटिव वे में बाइंड करता है, वैसे ही ये कैल्शियम आयंस कैलमोडिलिन के साथ भी कोऑपरेटिव फैशन में बाइंड करते हैं. सो व्हाट इज कोऑपरेशन नाउ? कोऑपरेशन इज समथिंग, जब पहला कैल्शियम आयन बाइंड होगा तब उसको बाइंड होने में बहुत ज्यादा टाइम लगेगा क्योंकि उसको अपनी साइड ढूंढनी पड़ेगी. ठीक है. सेकंड जो कैल्शियम आयन आएगा उसको उतना टाइम नहीं लगेगा क्योंकि ऑलरेडी उसके लिए एफिनिटी कैलमोडिलिन की इंप्रूव हो जाएगी. थर्ड उससे कम, और फोर्थ बिल्कुल आसानी से बाइंड हो जाएगा. सो दिस टाइप ऑफ बाइंडिंग इज कॉल्ड कोऑपरेटिव बाइंडिंग. So in this cooperative fashion binding has been seen in case of calcium calmodulin complex formation. Thus a small change in the level of cytosolic calcium ions, that is about fivefold, lead to the large change in the levels of active calmodulin. So okay, so as it binds calcium, calmodulin undergoes a conformational change. So this band form will be produced, as you seen from here. This will be produced out of this. So now catalyzed by CAM kinase phosphorylate regulatory gene regulatory proteins, that is for example CRAB protein, जैसा कि हमने अभी protein kinase A के केस में भी देखा. This CRAB is a transcription factor, and this particular transcription factor protein is going to phosphorylated by this particular calcium calmodulin dependent protein kinase that is called CAM kinase, which are serine threonine kinases. Why I am writing each time the serine threonine or the serine. Okay, so because these are very specific, they only act on these residues. If you write tyrosine here, there is no meaning of writing tyrosine here because it will not going to phosphorylate the tyrosine at all. Okay, so this is very important to write either serine or threonine or serine or tyrosine threonine like this. So some CAM kinases phosphorylate gene regulatory proteins, for example, CRAB, and this way activate and inhibit animal cells, but it is especially enriched in the nervous system. Now we are going to discuss this nervous system, how it is going to activate your neurons. So calmodulin participate in the regulation of several biological processes, including energy and biosynthetic metabolism, cell motility, because it is in helping in muscle contraction, exocytosis, cytoskeletal assembly, intracellular modulation of cyclic AMP and calcium concentrations, because we know cyclic AMP and calcium are going to act in a cooperative function, in a coordinated function. Okay, so therefore it is given. Cooperative I already discussed. Okay. Cooperative means when something which is after binding increases the affinity for binding of second similar molecule. Now, see, there are two terms we have discussed. One is cooperative, one is coordinate. Okay, so cooperative is the binding, coordinate is the functioning of the cyclic AMP in calcium ions. Now, the entry of extracellular calcium ions is particularly important in electrically excitable cells, जैसे कि हमारी nerve cells होती हैं और muscle cells होती हैं, क्योंकि वहाँ पे क्या होता है, chemical signals को electrical signals में convert किया जाता है या उल्टा. So now in this case actually उल्टा हो रहा है, यहाँ पे electrical signal को chemical signal में convert करेंगे, देखो कैसे करते हैं. And muscle in which the voltage gated calcium ion channel in the plasma membrane are opened by membrane depolarization. ओके, सो जब ये एक्साइटेबल सेल्स की बात करेंगे वहां पे कुछ आयन चैनल्स होंगे, उनके ओपन होने से या तो मेम्ब्रेन का डीपोलराइजेशन होगा, हाइपरपोलराइजेशन होगा, रीपोलराइजेशन होगा. ओके, so the resulting increase in the intracellular calcium ions then trigger the further release of calcium ions from the intracellular stores by activating distinct calcium channels. These calcium ion channels which are being opened in this response are called as ryanodine receptors. Okay, one effect of increases in intracellular calcium ion neurons trigger the release of neurotransmitters. So calcium ions plays a critical role in our neurons. For example, look here, critical role in converting the electric to chemical signals. So it is converting your electric into chemical signals in your nervous system. Okay, so this muscle cells, calcium ions is stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, from which it is being released by the opening of ryanodine receptors in response to the changes in membrane potential. So जैसे ही membrane potential change होगा, ये calcium ion channels जिन्हें हम ryanodine receptors बोल रहे हैं, उन पे IP3 आके बाइंड हो जाएंगे और उनको ओपन कर देंगे, जिसकी वजह से कैल्शियम आयंस विल बी रिलीज्ड इनटू द साइटोस्केल. दिस रिलीज इन स्टोर्ड कैल्शियम आयंस लीड टू द लार्ज इंक्रीज इन द साइटोस्केल, 10 टाइम इंक्रीज हो जाएगा मैक्स. ओके, व्हिच ट्रिगर मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन, जिसकी वजह से हमारे मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन होते हैं, हम मूव कर पाते हैं. Cells thus utilize a variety of mechanisms to regulate the intracellular calcium ions, making calcium ions a versatile second messenger that control a wide range of cellular processes. तो इस तरह से कैल्शियम आयंस और वर्सेटाइल सेकंड मैसेंजर्स हैं जो बहुत सारी सेलुलर प्रोसेसेस को कंट्रोल करते हैं. When you finish the calcium calmodulin signaling and you understand how this calcium and cyclic AMP are working in a coordinated fashion, there are two type of toxins which are given in your pathfinder. One is mode of action of cholera toxin, mode of action of pertussis toxin. And after reading these two toxins, okay, so it is given that pertussis toxin. Then we will discuss. So not in this PDF, some other PDF I will find. Okay, so first of all, both toxins are important because both are going to do, means we need to understand the mechanism how they are working. So the cholera toxin is an enterotoxin secreted by bacteria called Vibrio cholerae, which is unusual in having two circular chromosomes. So what is the specificity about Vibrio cholerae? This bacteria. So someone can ask you directly whether it is a bacteria or virus, because from name it seems like it is a virus. And some of you may do this particular mistake of understanding it like a virus. This is not a virus. This is a bacterium. It is producing a disease called cholera. What is special about this particular bacterium is it is having two circular chromosomes rather than one. So I have underlined the two circular chromosomes. The gene for cholera toxin are present on the integrated phage genome that is called CTX phage. Now, what is this phi phage? This particular phage, actually, these phases are viruses which will infect this particular bacteria. Okay, so once this particular phage is infecting this particular bacterium, Vibrio cholerae, it will integrate its genome into the chromosome of bacteria. So therefore, one chromosome is normal, whereas one chromosome is having, because it is having two circular chromosomes. So gene for chlorotoxin are present over this integrated phage genome. So the integrated portion of the virus will have this particular toxin genes, cholera genes, which will produce this particular disease, cholera. Okay, so this is not a property of bacteria. Now this disease is produced because of the genome which is present, or which is coming from the phage actually, which is coming from the virus actually. Okay, so the cholera toxin is an oligomeric complex and made up of 6 protein subunits. These 6 protein subunits can be designated as AB5. So the one subunit is A. It is having two types of subunits. One is called A subunit, one is called B subunit. But A is only single copy, whereas B is present in pentameric form. So 5 copies. So this is 6 protein subunit, a single copy of A subunit, 5 copies of B subunit. A subunit has catalytic property that ADP ribosylates the G proteins. Now, out of these two, this A is catalytic, okay, and B is having some binding role. So A subunit is catalytic property. It will ADP ribosylate the G protein. We know we are having G proteins which are interacting with GPCR. If this particular A subunit will ribosylate, ADP ribosylate our G proteins, so we know that the signaling or GPCR signaling cannot proceed inside the cell and will unable to exert its effect or will show some type of bad effects. So this pentameric form. Now the question is, what is the function of this B subunit, which is a pentamer? So this pentameric protein, that is B5, binds to the ganglioside GM1, which is present over the surface of intestinal epithelium. So suppose you drink some contaminated water or eat some food which is having this particular bacteria, Vibrio cholerae. So this pentameric protein B5, which is created by this bacteria, will bind and interact with this ganglioside GM1. This is a name for specific ganglioside, which is expressed over the intestinal epithelial cells. So in your intestine, this particular bacteria will bind to this particular ganglioside GM1 so that it will not be washed away from the surface of intestine. So intestinal epithelial cells will interact with the help of ganglioside GM1 to this particular pentameric protein that is called B5. So it is having some binding role, it is having some catalytic role. So this is going to affect your, or will produce a disease called cholera. Now, A subunit then ribosylate, specifically the arginine residue. Now this is very important. Again, this arginine, which is, do you know arginine is the most basic amino acid. It is positively charged, okay, because it is having some guanidino group. Arginine residue of the alpha subunit of GS protein. What is the GS protein? We have discussed 4 families. The first family is GS and GS alpha subunit, because we know in case of GS proteins family, this alpha subunit is only working, and after binding to GTP is going to activate adenylate cyclase enzyme or guanylate cyclase enzyme to produce secondary messengers. Once it is ADP ribosylated, and from where this ADP is coming, it is coming from NAD positive. So see here, ADP ribose is provided by the intracellular NAD positive. So this particular NAD, nicotinamide dinucleotide, is having this ADP ribose within itself, and it will provide this ADP, and this will be it will be ribosylated, ADP ribosylated. This particular arginine residue of this particular G protein. Okay, so that's how this G protein will be modified. The ADP ribosylation alters the alpha subunit so that यहाँ पे A लिखा हुआ था, but it is not correct. So I corrected it by this is alpha subunit because it is talking about alpha subunit. So that it because the A subunit is in the toxin only this over this bacteria Vibrio cholerae, and alpha subunit is of G protein, so that it can no longer hydrolyze bound GTP. अब होगा क्या, अगर अल्फा सब यूनिट चेंज हो जाएगी यानी इसके ऊपर एडीपी राइबोसाइलेशन हो जाएगा तो ये अल्टर हो जाएगी, इसका फंक्शन चेंज हो जाएगा। नाउ वैसे तो जनरली जो अल्फा सब यूनिट होती है वो जीटीपीएज की तरह से वर्क करती है, यानी कि जब भी जीटीपी आता है अल्फा सब यूनिट विल हाइड्रोलाइज इट इनटू जीडीपी फॉर्म और फिर वो दोबारा से बीटा गामा के साथ में इंटरेक्ट करने लग जाती थी। बट सपोज वंस इट इज एडीपी राइबोसाइलेटेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस ए सब यूनिट ऑफ दिस पार्टिकुलर toxin, now it will no longer hydrolyzes its bound GTP. अगर bound GTP को hydrolyze नहीं करेगी तो it will remain in an active form for a prolonged period of time, so causing it to remain in an active state and stimulates adenylate cyclase, because we know alpha subunit is going to activate adenylate cyclase indefinitely because it is not hydrolyzing its GTP now. So it will continuously produce cyclic AMP, cyclic AMP, cyclic AMP. So बहुत सारे cyclic AMP produce होंगे और फिर वो indefinitely active रहेगा ये particular enzyme cyclase, resulting prolonged elevation in this secondary messengers called cyclic AMP levels within the intestinal epithelial cells causes a large efflux of chloride ions and sodium ions and water into the gut, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारे क्लोराइड और सोडियम आयंस आएंगे और उसके साथ में वाटर भी किसी ऑर्गेनिज्म में या ह्यूमंस की गट में एक्यूमुलेट हो जाएगा, thereby causing a severe diarrhea. एक डायरिया लाइक कंडीशन प्रोड्यूस हो जाएगी, दैट इज अ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ दिस cholera toxin or cholera disease. Okay, so now you understand how this particular cholera toxin is going to affect your metabolism, how it is going to accumulate the water and chloride and sodium ion inside your gut, and it will lead to diarrhea. Okay, some confusions, if you are having some confusion you may ask. Okay, you're free to ask. Now the second type of toxins we are going to study in this particular class is pertussis toxin, and many times I have written this very important because the causative agent of pertussis toxin is, have you heard about whooping cough? This is the second name of this particular disease, pertussis, and this pertussis toxin is going to cause this particular pertussis that is called whooping cough, जिसमें बहुत सारी खांसी आती है। और ये जो causative agent है Bordetella pertussis, many times it has been asked in the match the column section, a number of question aate hain CSI. Okay, so this Bordetella pertussis has been asked many times. Okay, so causes disease called pertussis caused by this particular secreted by this Bordetella pertussis colonizes in the respiratory tract, जैसे कि कोरोना वायरस हमारे रेस्पिरेटरी ट्रैक में कॉलोनाइज हो जाता है, वैसे ही ये बैक्टीरिया भी ओके रेस्पिरेटरी ट्रैक में कॉलोनाइज करता है, where it destroy this special class of epithelial cells, ciliated epithelial cells, because we know the ciliated epithelia or epithelial cells are required to secrete, they are secreting mucus, and these are having cilia to remove the dust particles or some other things from our respiratory tract, to clear the respiratory tract and sweep away the mucus. Mucus is removed from the respiratory tract. But once it is destroyed, the ciliated epithelial cells are destroyed by this beta pertussis or Bordetella pertussis. Without the ciliary action, without these cilia, vigorous cuffing is needed to clear the tract. We need to cuff. हमें continuously खांसना पड़ेगा to remove or to clear the tract, to remove the mucus. So this pertussis toxin catalyzes the ADP ribosylation of cysteine residue. Previous case, in case of cholera, it is ribosylating the arginine residue. Here it is ribosylating the cysteine residue of alpha subunit, that is in the GI class actually. So this is the second, it was ribosylating in G stimulatory GS class. This is the second class of GPCRs. So here in G inhibitory GI, it is going to ribosylate the cysteine residue So thus the inhibitory GI is an inhibitory G protein. In an activated state, this particular alpha subunit will bound to GTP and dissociate from the beta gamma complex, where the alpha inhibit the adenylate cyclase enzyme. We have studied in the table that this is going to inhibit the adenylate cyclase because it is having some inhibitory role. So ADP ribosylation of the GI alpha prevent the GI complex from interacting with the receptors. So once it is ribosylated, so this particular alpha subunit is will not going to interact with the receptors. So when it is not interacting with the receptor, it will not be activated and it will not going to inhibit this adenylate cyclase. So the complex remain bound to the GDP, okay, because it is not interacting with any of the GPCR receptors and unable to do inhibit adenylate cyclase, and it is unable to inhibit this adenylate cyclase because it is not being converted into GTP bound form. Therefore, this adenylate cyclase will remain active and will produce lots of cyclic AMP secondary messenger molecules, and thereby causing many cell signalings. Therefore, we are coughing continuously. So this is called whooping cough actually. Hope you understand these two mechanisms. Okay, if you're having a query, you are free to ask. You can ask anything. Now, the last section of today's class we are going to discuss, actually not given in this particular PDF, so we will move to another PDF. And this is not different because the same, I have scanned this Pathfinder only. Okay, but actually this portion is here. Okay, so it is given after, because we have studied rod cell light activation, which was leading to the conformational change in rhodopsin activation of transducin phosphodiesterase, and this lead to the hyperpolarization state. Okay, so this we have discussed. In today's class, we also have discussed this GPCR are being also activated by phospholipase C, and calcium ion signaling is happening in a similar fashion, and it is activating the protein kinase C, and protein kinase C can activate some of the CRAB transcription factors and can do some of the gene transcriptions. Okay, now the question is what type of regulation of ion channels is done with the help of these G proteins? So, G proteins do not act exclusively by regulating the activity of membrane-bound enzymes that alter concentration of cyclic AMP or calcium ions in the cytosol. A G protein that is called G12 activate and another type of protein actually we have discussed in the table, G12, okay, activate the guanine nucleotide exchange factor that is called GF. Guanine nucleotide exchange factor in the sense because it is changing GDP with GTP. So these are guanine nucleotide exchange factor that activate the monomeric GTPase of the ROHO family. So, and it is going to regulate the dynamics of actin cytoskeleton. We know there are two types of muscles. One is actin, two types of protein in our muscle, actin and myosin. So it is going to affect the actin cytoskeletal in our cells and in our cells. Okay. In some other cases, G protein directly activate and inactivate the ion channel in the plasma membrane of the target cells, thereby altering the ion permeability. So it can also modify some of the ion channels, thereby it is going to affect the ion permeability. For example, as we have seen in the case of rod cells in retina, where it is inhibiting or it is affecting the sodium ion or calcium ion permeability. Also, in acetylcholine released by the vagus nerve reduces both the rate and strength of heart muscle contraction. एक example और भी है जहाँ पे जब acetylcholine release होता है, it is released by the vagus nerve, and it is going to reduce both the rate, means your heart rate is decreased, and strength of heart muscle contraction, and the strength with which it is beating, actually it will be reduced. This effect is mediated by a special class of acetylcholine receptor called muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. This particular class is being present only in the heart muscle cells, okay, that activate the G inhibitory protein, and the mechanism of action is via the inhibitory G proteins or GPCRs. Once activated, the alpha subunit of the GI or the inhibitory inhibits the adenylate cyclase, because it is alpha subunit is going to inhibit this adenylate cyclase enzyme. While Okay, so one more thing I want to tell you, this adenylate cyclase and adenylyl cyclase are both the same enzymes. They are not different. So somewhere you can find the adenylate cyclase, somewhere you find YL is written instead of 8. Okay. While the beta gamma subunit bind to the K positive channels in the case of G12, as we have discussed. Okay. The beta gamma complex is going to bind to the K positive channels in the heart muscle cells plasma membrane and open them. Once the K positive ion channels are opened in the heart muscle cells, the opening of these channels makes it difficult to depolarize the cell. So you cannot depolarize the heart muscle cell. Okay, so thereby contribute to the inhibitory effect of acetylcholine on these heart muscle cells, thereby, because it is inhibitory effect, so therefore it is going to going to decrease both the rate and strength of the heart muscle contraction. Other G proteins regulate the activity of the ion channels less directly, either by stimulating the channel phosphorylation. Channel phosphorylation, for example, protein kinase A, protein kinase C, chem kinase, which we have already discussed, or by causing the production or destruction of cyclic nucleotides. For example, cyclic AMP is being destroyed, that directly activate or inactivate the ion channels. So cyclic nucleotides, जैसे cyclic GMP हो गया. Okay, so cyclic GMP we know is affecting directly these ion channels, so these can be destroyed. Okay, so if you do not remember, I will show you. So the cyclic GMP is also having role which is affecting your sodium ion channels in your rod cells or retina or eye. So these can be destroyed. Okay. Now, after discussing the regulation of ion channels, because these GPC are also doing some type of ion channel regulations. Now the two major ways by which these GPCR are doing adaptations. So if the cell signaling is more, they need to regulate themselves, and this can be done in two ways. One is called desensitization and other is called internalization. Desensitization is something if they do not respond to the prolonged or repeated stimulations. Okay, so adaptation is defined as demineralization of means decreasing of receptor signaling in the presence of continued or repeated stimulation. Targeted cells usually use two processes to adapt. One is when they are exposed to high concentration of signal molecules for a prolonged period of time. So one is desensitization. So desensitization is a loss of response to prolonged and repeated stimulation. Suppose there is a GPCR and there are prolonged for a long period of time, there is a repeated stimulation. Many signal molecules are coming and stimulating the same GPCR. So this particular GPCR will become desensitized. It means कोई इफेक्ट नहीं होगा उस पे अगर बार बार सेम सिग्नल मॉलिक्यूल आके बाइंड होगा. It starts with the phosphorylation of several serine and threonine residues in cytosolic plasma, cytosolic domains of the receptor. So this particular GPCR will undergoing some type of serine and threonine residues phosphorylations in their cytosolic domains. Receptor phosphorylation is catalyzed by a family of kinases that are called this other family. This is another family that are called GRK. So these are called G protein coupled receptor kinases. So they will phosphorylate some of the serine. So they are other serine and threonine kinases, but they are going to phosphorylate the cytosolic domains of GPCR so that they will become desensitized. Desensitized in the sense that now after phosphorylation, they will not interact with the G proteins. Therefore, they cannot send signals to the G proteins. Okay. So the GRK phosphorylation receptor then act as a substrate for binding to the family of proteins that are called arrestins. अब क्या होगा जैसे ही phosphorylation होगा serine और threonine पे, now another family that are called arrestins. Arrestins बोले तो जो अरेस्ट कर लेंगी उन्हें, यानी कि साइटोप्लाज्मिक डोमेन्स को जी प्रोटीन्स के साथ इंटरेक्ट नहीं करने देंगे. Arrestins will come and bind to these serine or phosphorothreonine residues. which uncouple the receptors with the G proteins. Other kinases, principally the second messenger dependent protein kinases, are also known to play the role in desensitization. So this is very common, but other kinases are also doing by some other means, which is less known actually. Internalization, actually what will happen when internalization happen, the process of internalization is happening in the case of insulin receptor. For example, when there is too much of insulin, these receptor will go inside the cell so that they are no more able to interact with the insulin signal. Internalization involves removal of receptors from the cell membrane, so these are removed from the surfaces. So either in the two ways, या तो क्या होगा, रिसेप्टर्स को एक मेम्ब्रेन बाउंड वेसिकल में अंदर की तरफ साइटोसोल में ले लेगी सेल, या उनको लाइसोसोम की हेल्प से डिग्रेड कर दिया जाता है. सो द इंटरनलाइजेशन और इंटरनलाइज्ड रिसेप्टर्स मे बी आइदर री-एक्सपोज्ड थ्रू द एक्सोसाइटोसिस or by degraded. They are permanently degraded in the lysosomes. So either permanently degraded or they will be exposed again by exocytosis. So internalization of the cell surface receptor to the intracellular membranous compartments is termed as receptor sequestration. अब इसमें भी दो केसेस होंगे, यहाँ पे होगा receptor sequestration, whereas destruction of receptors in the lysosome after internalization terms as receptor down regulation. अगर प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन के वेसिकल्स में उनको दोबारा से एक्सोसाइटोसिस के थ्रू एक्सपोज करवाना है सेल को, देन दिस प्रोसेस इज कॉल्ड सिक्वेस्ट्रेशन, रिसेप्टर सिक्वेस्ट्रेशन. और अगर उन्हें परमानेंटली डैमेज करना है लाइसोसोम की एंजाइम्स की हेल्प से, देन दिस इज कॉल्ड रिसेप्टर डाउन रेगुलेशन, RDR, रिसेप्टर डाउन रेगुलेशन. Okay, so the time frame over which these processes occur range from seconds. Phosphorylation can happen in seconds, phosphorylation, dephosphorylation, minutes. Endocytosis, exocytosis requires some time, that is occur in minutes, hours. Down regulation means if you want to degrade the receptors, then it will occur in hours actually. So the time frame will matter, will vary actually. So extent of the receptor desensitization is regulated by the number of factors that induces receptor structure and environment. So cell के environment पे depend करता है कि उसका sequestration होना है या down regulation होना है. Are you able to understand these two terms, sequestration and down regulation? Okay, the row family we will discuss later on, not now. Okay, so row family is in our upcoming classes on. Traditionally, GPCR desensitization has been characterized by the events that contribute to the uncoupling of receptors from their homotrimeric G proteins. However, GPCR signaling can also be terminated at the level of heterotrimeric G protein. For example, a family of protein termed the regulator of G protein signaling. This particular protein, RGS, I told you earlier also, this RGS act to increase the rate of hydrolysis of GTP bound to the G alpha. This G alpha is a GTPase, and it is going to hydrolyze the bound GTP to convert it into GDP, and then this is being regulated. But there is another protein of regulator protein that is called RGS, G protein signaling regulator protein, which is going to activate the G alpha GTPase so that it can hydrolyze the GTP bound GTP and can be inactivated. So that's how it is being regulated. So there are various ways of regulation of GPCR signaling, whether it is receptor sequestration, down regulation, internalization, desensitization, okay, or directly by activation of the GTPase, G alpha protein, with the help of some regulator G protein, regulator of G protein signaling proteins, which are the regulators of GPCRs. Okay, so we are running out of time and there are only 6 members in our class. So I'm unmuting you for some time so that you can ask your queries.